This is the end of the month of June, rolling into the dead period. It's decision-making time for a lot of people. Tennessee has put themselves in some good spots with a lot of people. I think the easiest way probably to do this is we'll just probably run through some things position by position. You good with that? Does that make sense?
I'm good. It's to use the emoji that I like to use a lot. It's a lot of this.
All right. So let's start on offense, okay? And let's start at the receiver position. Tennessee had a couple of commits in for official visits at the receiver spot and are in pretty good shape there when you look at it, but trying to close out on that board. So let's start there with the receiver spot. And I guess we'll start with Travis Smith, or unless you want to start with the committed players. Go ahead.
No, I mean, obviously Tennessee's got Joakim Dotson, Rodarius Jackson committed. I thought it was good since George couldn't be here this weekend that, those two guys were here to help recruit Travis Smith, who to me is the missing piece to the receiver room for this class. Tennessee's also recruiting DJ Miller, but Travis Smith had a fantastic time. He's set to announce on July 13th. Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, kind of a three-team race there. I think Tennessee is kind of the team to beat here. Again, pay no attention to the RPM. But the Home State Bulldogs aren't necessarily going away, and Alabama has pulled themselves into this. Now, Alabama is now the perceived favorite for Caleb Cunningham. Chad Simmons and Steve Wilfong had that out there. Our good friends Tim Watts and everybody at BOL have been all over Caleb Cunningham's kind of ascension to being a possible pickup for the Crimson Tide. I think that affects a guy like Travis Smith because they're still recruiting Kalik Lockett, they're still recruiting Derek Meadows, a few other receivers. So what does Alabama do there? I feel like Tennessee has shown Travis Smith the most love. I think that he really likes the offense here. Again, a few weeks before that July 13th announcement, but he leaves campus. If you watched our interview with him, it's hard to not like where Tennessee stands, as we said here, just 3 weeks into the month of June.
Yeah, good player. Great frame. I know George McIntyre spent some time talking with him at the On3 Elite event and has talked to him some since then as well. Mike Matthews has spoken with him a bit about leaving Georgia. So we'll see what happens with that one as he goes through the decision-making process with his parents, him and his mom. His mom told me that they would spend some time. It's his decision, but she wants to help him make sure he's looking at all the pros and cons, and any questions he has, she will help him answer, but she will not advise him on where to go. This is totally his decision on where to go. Athens is the closest from home, from where they live in Atlanta. Tuscaloosa and Knoxville are about the same distance, so there's no real factor there. So that's where Tennessee stands at the receiver position. You mentioned Miller, the kid from St. Louis. We'll see what happens with that, AP. I don't know that he's got a time frame at this point in terms of making the decision. He seems to be, I don't want to say early in the process, but he seems to be a little slower in the process in terms of making a decision there. So we'll see what happens with those two guys who are clearly the top two guys for Tennessee at that position rolling into July, with Smith being their biggest priority. Let's talk about the tight end position and where Tennessee stands there. They will take one more tight end, right? And if it's the right one, correct?
Correct. If it's Desan Brame, they'll take one more. If it's not, then we're not going to take a body because obviously they're in pretty good shape with a couple of top tight ends, in Carson Sneed and Kendra Harrison in the 2026 class. So, no, if it's to me, it's Brame or bust if you're going to add a second. Otherwise, Tennessee is thrilled to the moon with Jack Van Dorslayer. They would just be, it would be like thrilled to, Mars, I guess, if they got both. I mean, I don't think Tennessee, envisioned being a real heavy contender to get both. But I think that Tennessee's still very much in it with Desan Brame. Brame did not tell Oregon he was in this weekend. Many thought and have had him pegged for Oregon for a while, even though he came out, singing Tennessee's praises after last weekend. I think a lot of people said, well, he's going back to Oregon next weekend, probably wrap it up, sew it up then. Does not feel like that's the case. Now, that's not to say he can't end up there because I certainly feel like he can. But at the same time, I think that he really liked Tennessee. His family was very comfortable in Knoxville. and Tennessee's still very much in this. As I think it is really a coin flip type recruitment. We'll see if he can come to a decision before the 29th, which is when he's set to announce. If he doesn't, he has told me, I won't hesitate to push it back. If I can't come to a complete decision where I have clarity, and I think right now he kind of goes back and forth. One day it's Tennessee, the next day it's Oregon. I think Oklahoma's the third team in this, but I don't think that they're a heavy player. I think it's really Oregon or the Vols, and I think he's really torn. So he's got to come up with a decision sometime between now and the 29th, or, as he told me, I will not hesitate to push it back.
But his girlfriend's coming to Tennessee, AP, right?
This is correct. She's going to be talking to the Lady Vols. Well, it's definitely a dynamic, and I mean, you can't say it's not. Now, I'm sure he would downplay that and say, I've got to do what's best for me, and he does. But, it also doesn't hurt Tennessee's chances either. Like, if anything, it's a positive. But, we'll see. We'll see kind of where this thing goes. But as of right now, I totally would tell you it's a coin flip, as we said here on Tuesday morning.
All right, let's talk about the running back position. Where does Tennessee stand there with Mills Knight and some other factors in there at the running back position as Darrell Sims looks to solidify that in this class? What's the numbers roughly? I know everything's fluid, but where do you think they are at that position?
Well, they would love to add one more. This whole time they've been big back, and Shaky Mills Knight would be that big back. But Tennessee's continued to recruit Usman Chroma. They've continued they've started to pick back things up with DeJuan Morris at Murfreesboro, Oakland, who is not a big back, but he is a playmaker. So again, we'll see what happens with Shaky Mills Knight. He was on the Ole Miss visit this past weekend. I think that one, that one to me is Ole Miss, Tennessee, maybe Miami, but I really think it's Ole Miss or Tennessee at the end of the day. One of those two schools will land Shaky Mills Knight, and I think you'll see him work the next few weeks to try to figure out what he wants to do and come up with a decision.
Yeah, Michigan tried to get in there late, but they could not work out a time for him to visit Michigan before the dead period. Doesn't look like the Wolverines will be a factor there, but we'll see what happens with that one. The kid from Oakland, maybe the end of July, he might slip back on campus if Tennessee's there. That's what you had in the war room, right?
Yeah, correct. He was at USC this weekend. He's committed to Southern Cal. That's not a long way from home, and I know it's easy to go, man, I love it out there, but it's a lot harder for mom and dad and everybody to get out there. I think at the end of the day, he heads back closer to home, whether that's Auburn. We'll see if Tennessee actually, continues to go there. They've obviously, talked to him. They'd love to get him on campus at the end of July and see what happens. But this kid is a playmaker, and he's going to run for 1,000,000 yards at Oakland this year for Kevin Creasy. Kid is dynamic with the ball in his hands and is just very, very, skill set driven, and a kid that just knows how to shine bright on the biggest stage.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens there. All right, on the offensive line, Tennessee gets a commit, but everybody is on David Sanders' watch. What does it mean? Wilfong's talking about Ohio State. Sure. Everybody's trying to figure out exactly what's going on with David Sanders. Start wherever you want to. I know with Utu, I mean that's a solid inside get for Tennessee. You can talk about that and roll on wherever you want to with David Sanders and whoever else.
Well, we said in the war room a few weeks ago that Tennessee, when they looked at the makeup of their offensive line, they really needed to kind of remake the interior because they lose so many guys after this year. To have Anthony Ogumoro, to have Douglas Utu, to have Nick Moore. That's one center, two guards that Tennessee just is in love with. They are to the moon. Now, if you could add Jacoby Ward, to me, that's the cherry on top. Big, broad-shouldered guard from down in South Georgia. Utu is someone that Tennessee really targeted early on. They impressed. A kid that is kind of got that mean, nasty disposition on the football field.
And he's that's a well put together 6'4", 310, 15-pound guy. I mean, it's
correct.
That's not an ugly 3 to 315 for a kid that age.
No, and those polys, man, they make great offensive linemen. He is a Tongan. So you got kind of different levels of Polynesian, right? So you got Tongans, you got Polynesians, kind of crop, and of course you got Ogumoro, who's Micronesian. So we're hitting all the islands, Hubs. Tennessee is scouring the globe. This is no longer just nationally recruiting. We're internationally recruiting. There was a kid from France that camped in Tennessee on Sunday. You know, hey, I may be going to Disneyland Paris here before too long to do commitment videos. I'm joking, but you know, Tennessee obviously now focuses on the tackles. David Sanders 1, Juan Gaston 2, Josh Petty obviously is still right there. But you know, as I said on the board on Monday, you know, there's different levels to this, right? And so David Sanders is the guy. You're right. Will Fong put in kind of just like, you know, if you were picking today, who are you leaning towards? He said, I go back and forth, could go either way, which means he's just putting a guess out there. I know everybody loves, and Steve does a fantastic job. He's the best, right? Him and Chad are, you know, 1A, 1B, whatever you want to call it. Those guys, when they speak, people listen. But this isn't an RPM pick or an old crystal ball for Steve when he was at 24/7. This is just kind of like, this is kind of where I think it's at. I'm not really sure, but I would lean this way. But again, it doesn't know for sure. The kid did not commit to Ohio State on his visit. I've talked to multiple people. That never happened. The kids that went to Ohio State on that visit felt like David was coming there. But guess what? The kids that visited Tennessee the weekend that David came to Tennessee thought he was coming to Tennessee. So that means the kid's got a good poker face. We'll see where this thing goes. He told me commitment date, first week of school, was when he'd like to do it in front of his classmates in August. Now, when I left the complex here a week and a half ago, I said, are you still with that? And he said, as of now, but he goes, let's get through next weekend, which was the Ohio State visit, and then we'll see if I bump it up. I think he's going to bump it up. I don't think he's going to commit next week. I think sometime in July, though. I just don't know if this thing gets all the way to mid-August. I think the family wants to take their time. They've got a process. They want to go through it. But once they know, I don't think they're going to be people that drag it out. So David Sanders' mom and dad, they have handled this thing like a pro. They've had their plan. They've stuck to their plan. So if they truly stick to their commitment plan, you are looking at mid-August. But I think they're definitely sticking to the plan of, we're going to shut things down. We're going to talk about it as a family. We're going to make a family decision. Grandma, grandpa, everybody's been along for this ride. I'm not saying that they all have a say, but they all will have opinions that kind of work towards kind of the decision-making process. So David Sanders, again, I think this thing's totally still up in the air. I would still take Tennessee if it were me. But I understand what Steve's saying. I've always said Ohio State's a real player there. I do think this is a two-team race. I do that. Alabama was out when he didn't take the visit. I don't think he's going to Georgia, and I don't think he's going to Clemson. To me, it's either the Vols or the Buckeyes.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see kind of where he is coming off of the visit high once that settles down, right? That's what we're always looking at, is where do things stand 72 hours and beyond after you get through with the official visit and all those things. And now that he doesn't have another visit to take, and talking to his mom, they're going to breathe for a little bit here. I mean, this is not – they're not going to sit at the kitchen table, you know, tonight and start hammering out, you know, where they're going to go. I think they're just going to kind of let it breathe, catch their breath. It has been a whirlwind month for them for all that they have going on with the On3 Elite event they went to, the visits they've taken, the unofficial visits they've taken. They have not been home very much, and they have had very little kind of family private time. So they're going to take their time on this deal and just kind of walk away from it for a few days before they come back around to it and really start going into that decision-making process. At least that's what his mom indicated to me when we talked when they were leaving the Tennessee visit there. I know Tennessee's done at the quarterback position with George McIntyre, obviously, but
hold on, before we go in,
sure, yeah,
I do want to say, like, Juan Gaston to me is the total unicorn in the Steel Hubs.
Okay, yeah,
he is the total X factor. Because the kid doesn't talk a whole lot, like, if ever.
Lots of assumptions going on with Juan, don't you?
A lot of assumptions, and I can tell you, if you assume with Juan Gaston, you get burned. So, like, yeah, he may end up at Georgia. That's the closest team. He grew up being a big fan of Oregon. He loved all the color changing and all the fancy uniforms, but it's a long way to go when he's such a close-knit kid to his family, to his mom. Like that one I struggle with, but I will say this: when you live in Atlanta and you're a major hub, it's a lot easier to get to an Oregon than if you live, where you've got to connect in Atlanta, right? If you live in, Alcoa and you're going from Alcoa, you fly to Knoxville to Atlanta, Atlanta to Portland and drive down. Either way, like it's just not easy to get to. A little easier there. But I still think it's Georgia or Tennessee. I'll believe that kid's at Oregon when I see him at Oregon. So I think it's Tennessee or Georgia. Either way, I do think that this one is, who knows? To me, it's the total X factor unicorn type recruitment.
Yeah, and I think it's easier to say I'll believe he's not at Georgia when he's not at Georgia. And that's not fair to say, Austin, but you say that because the assumption has been Georgia for forever, right? That was just everybody's just assumed that one was going to be Georgia, even though he's made multiple trips to Tennessee, he's seen other places,
Well,
but everybody's just assumed Georgia there.
his teammate, Travis Smith, all the Georgia people assumed it was Georgia there too until they
Right.
realized, wait a minute, Tennessee's actually in this thing. I mean, Matt Ray went and saw Travis Smith, 11, 12 days ago down at the Georgia Tech 7-on-7 camp for Westlake. And multiple Georgia reporters said, what are you doing here, Matt? I'm here to see Travis Smith. Oh, he's going to Georgia. He's locked to Georgia. Then they walked over and talked to Travis Smith, and they said, wow, that's a lot closer than I thought it was. So, the point is like, you just never assume. Like, could he easily end up at Georgia? Absolutely. And it would make sense, right? Georgia's right now, I mean, they could have easily won 3 national titles in a row. They just picked the wrong week to lose last year. And so, I mean, and Kirby Smart and them pull in kids from that state. But if you go back and look at the rankings the last few years, they also, there's so many kids in Georgia, you can't get them all. So, we'll see with Juan. To me, he's the total, like, no one knows what that kid's truly going to do. Juan knows. Juan's mama might know, but I don't believe other schools do.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, quickly on quarterback. Tennessee's done at that position in the class of 25 with George McIntyre, but the best player in the class of 26 is talking about a commitment date, AP.
Yeah, Faison Brandon going to bump things up to August, it looks like. And if that's the case, obviously everybody's going to go, well, Tennessee got the prediction. Steve put the Fong bomb in for Tennessee. He's taken some visits since then. He's went to camp at Florida State. He's went to camp at Alabama and LSU. We'll see. Tennessee's had the longest kind of running, best, kind of intertwined relationship with Faison and his family. It would make a ton of sense if they're the pick here. I don't see him going to the ACC. I don't see Florida State. I could see LSU, maybe even Alabama. But again, the kid's been so into everything Vols. He's taken so many trips here. I think it's a good sign if you're Tennessee if he bumps things up to August. But again, I need to talk to Faison again to kind of get a feel for that one. But as we said here, the 20th, 21st, 20, whatever today. What is today? 25th. God, I'm way too long. I mean, I'm missing days at this point. It feels like Tennessee's in a good spot.
Yeah, some people feel like the month of June is 47 days long instead of 30 days long. Others feel like it goes really, really quickly. It just depends on how it goes for you in the world of recruiting in the month of June. All right, let's flip it over to the defensive side of the ball, and we'll run defensive line here quickly. Obviously, Tennessee gets the commitment from Charles House. They had the Dye kid in this weekend as an edge guy. Some names out there, some bodies out there. What do you think that board is? What do you think they are on the defensive line as you hit the dead period here?
Well, Tennessee obviously would love to add Bryce Donovan Jenkins, big defensive
tackle. It was in this weekend.
Yep. It was in this past weekend out of Washington, D.C. Marion Dye, they'd love to add him. That's you got to watch Purdue there. The Home State Boilermakers are, they've got some NIL money to spend. They want to keep that kid in state. And so that's one you have to watch. Obviously, when you look at Tennessee, Ohio State, and Purdue, one of them sticks out as it doesn't belong from a traditional football standpoint. I get if you're a Purdue fan, can they beat Tennessee in the Music City Bowl? That's a game. But like when you look at the tradition of length, Tennessee is not in the same category as Purdue. So like if he's going to Purdue, it's because they went all in to try to keep the kid in state. Tennessee and Ohio State make the most sense here. But again, a lot of it will depend on what he and his family decide to do. But yeah, that's a 3-team race there for Marion Dye. He really likes Coach Chop. He likes Tennessee a lot and had a really good time this past weekend.
All right. So Isaiah Gibson was not here He was been a Southern Cal commit, decommitted from there. That surprised no one when he decommitted from Southern Cal. Went back to Georgia for an unofficial visit to close out the month of June. Smells like Bulldogs, AP?
Yeah, I mean, when you start looking at kind of how the map goes, and the Georgia fans, they got mad because I said he went to see if Georgia would up their offer. Hey, man, guess what? It's a business. Everybody's going to shoot their shot.
Sure.
And so, like, if you don't think kids are shooting their shot with Georgia and you think everybody's going just because they love the G, then you're wrong. So, like, understand, like, the kids are going to ask. Doesn't mean Georgia's going to say yes, but they're certainly going to ask. And so, with Isaiah Gibson, it feels like Georgia's going to be the pick there. Tennessee showed well, but ultimately, like, the kids from Georgia, they're producing a ton of players and putting them in the NFL at a really high rate. And so no one's going to blink an eye if the kid from, Warner Robins, rolls over to Athens. And certainly it feels like they've got the most momentum here, as we said here on the 25th day of June. So with Isaiah Gibson.
Yeah, so you got Donovan Jenkins and you got Dye. Anybody else that you're closely monitoring for a July decision at the defensive line position?
Not for July. Damian Shanklin will do something in August. He visited Tennessee last weekend. This past weekend, he was at Alabama. That one's got, several twists and turns, I'd say, left in it. But, yeah, August is kind of where that thing's headed for. And we'll see if Tennessee can continue to be a player with Damian Shanklin on the defensive line.
All right, moving to linebacker. That's been the position that maybe has been the hardest to get a feel for, right? Because William Inge is a late arrival. He comes from the West Coast. He's got some guys on the West Coast that he's been recruiting. Can he get them interested in the South, get them interested in Tennessee? Then you got a couple of Georgia kids popping up on the radar screen at the linebacker spot. That's the hardest position to set a board at. So I'm going to put you on the spot here and say, hey, try to set a board at the linebacker spot as we close out June.
Well, Jaden Perlotti feels like that one's still on flip watch to me. He went back to Georgia this past weekend, but, Rusty – if you saw his ramblings on Monday morning, you saw Rusty Manziel. You saw that, he feels like that one's still trending away. Not to say that the kid can't still end up there, but it certainly feels like the kid will indeed flip, and Tennessee would be the main target to get the flip. Again, pay no attention to the RPM, and then. The other one to watch would be Christian Gass, who, got a prediction to Missouri on Sunday, but I felt like leaving the visit that's a Tennessee-Georgia battle for Christian Gass, who can play inside or outside. He's 6'2.5", 220 pounds. And so that one's one to watch, over the next few weeks because, Tennessee, I thought, made a move there. They're a definite contender for Christian Gass, who's out of Covington, Georgia. Abdul Sanders visited here 2 weeks ago, was at Alabama this past week, the Alabama commit. That one feels like he'll stick with Alabama. But, yeah, the linebacker position, much more difficult to kind of maneuver around, as we said here in late June. And then, of course, the secondary hubs, Tennessee, will be looking for Trey Poteet to make a decision here in the not-so-distant future. Should be later today. And Tennessee seems to be trending there. Onus Konanbani, loved everything about the Tennessee visit. We'll see when he does something. I think the sooner the better for Tennessee, though. If he doesn't announce for a while, I think that it allows other teams to creep back in for the Canadian kid who plays over in South Carolina. Yeah,
he's talking about maybe August doing something. Is that?
Well, he said August, but he also told Matt Ray, and when he left, campus, hey, if I get home in a couple of days and I just want to do it, I may just do it. So, again.
Could be
sooner the better.
Yeah, could be any time with that coming off the visit there, as Willie Martinez has recruited him. And then I guess we got to close it out in the secondary with Shady Hayward, right? Unless I'm missing somebody else. And Shady has had Tennessee out in front. Then everybody was kind of out in front at different times in the month of June. Tennessee gets the last visit. Feels like they leave with some momentum. But I thought you said it best on the board when you gave some Sunday night thoughts after the weekend visit. That one just feels like it's got a turn, a twist, and a whole bunch of those between now and whenever he's going to announce on his birthday, I guess it is in late July for the Toombs County standout prospect there. I don't know,
because I think he's tried to throw people off. Again, he said Tennessee led for so long that I think he looked up and said, no, there's not really going to be any suspense if I pick Tennessee. Everybody's going to go, well, yeah, you said that for months. So, like, I think he's tried to throw some people off, but in turn, by doing that, like, you've inserted some twists and turns, and so like Georgia is, they're staying in contact with Shady. So I'm not going to discount the Bulldogs again. Pay no attention to the RPM. And when I say that, I mean like because some of the percentages are just wrong. Not that Georgia can't be the pick because they can, but like 65.2% no. I don't think he's going to go to Florida, and I don't think he's going to go to South Carolina. Like, I think the only team that would be able to upset Tennessee here would be Georgia, and we'll see if that happens. Again, not going to commit till his birthday on July 27th. So for all those teams, for Tennessee, they've got to continue to recruit him right now, like it, all the way through July 27th, like it was June 4th. So it will be another month of fun for those coaches that are recruiting Shady Hayward.
And while you're doing that on vacation, right? Because you're supposed to get a vacation during the dead period, which doesn't really exist, obviously. So we'll see. I just wanted to take this part of the podcast, and I thought the easiest thing for us to do, AP, was just run down the board. I mean, we talked about this, I guess, Sunday when we were hanging out and watching camp or whatever. Putting recruiting classes together are interesting because there's moments and times where it's like,
this is your analogy, and I think it's the best thing you've said. So
it's like you feel like your team's never going to get anybody, right? Because you look up and some other schools are getting people, and it's like, you can't recruit anybody, and you can't you're not going to do anybody. Are you even going to fill out a class, right? And then you hit a window where it's like, well, they're getting everybody. They lead for everybody, and the reality is it ends up being somewhere in the middle of that. Tennessee was in a position a year ago where we thought July was going to be a big boom, right? A bunch of noise. Yep. They didn't make a ton of noise there. They're poised to be in a position that it feels like they're going to make noise this July again as well. It's all about how they close. Did you feel like they're in a little better shape than they were last year, or do you feel like it's all about being able to close? We'll just have to wait and see.
Well, I know everybody's going to read into this. So I'm trying to be.
I know it's a bad
smart with my words. I'm not going to cause a panic and say that it's. I think you just have to take it day by day. I mean, like it's easy to say right now Tennessee's in a good spot with Travis Smith, but who knows what happens between now and July 13th? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's the problem. If you're Tennessee or any school, when a kid's got a date that's 3-4 weeks out, is so much can happen. One phone call can happen. So, like, again. Me, Rusty Manziel, Tim Watts, Will Fong, Chad, whoever can have a recruit or a recruitment dead to rights. You can have it lock, stock, and barrel 100% until you don't. Yeah. And that's the thing is like one phone call can flip everything and you can be wrong. So again, one day at a time. You feel good about where Tennessee's at with several of these players. You know that they're probably fighting an uphill battle with a few more. But, in the end, the ones they may be in good shape with, they may miss out on because of a phone call, and ones that they're trailing on, they may get because of a phone call. So you just never know kind of how this next month is going to play out, and you just kind of have to let it roll one day at a time.
Yep, and we'll see. I mean, peer recruiting is going to be big over the course of the next month,
yep.
And because as a coach, you're trying to find that balance, right? Give them space, but don't feel like you're ignoring them, but don't overwork them. Don't call them too much. I mean, there's a lot of interesting plays to make here over the next few weeks as guys get ready to make their July decisions for whatever date they have. Maybe it's a birthday, grandma's birthday, mom's birthday, or just a random day that they picked out of the air. Or maybe they bump it up. You think you're playing it one way, and then all of a sudden it's a decision 2 weeks earlier than you expected, or a guy bumps it back by a month. That's the thing, and that's why you have to take it day by day. And we're going to cover it for you day by day, hour by hour. Matt and Austin are unbelievable at what they do.
We'll see how July happens. Well, they'll be telling me I suck and Matt sucks by the time we get to the end of the July. It don't go their way. Even though I've said David Sanders can absolutely go to Ohio State. Now, again, as we said here, I would take Tennessee right now. Right now. Keywords, right now.
Yeah, and that's the world we're playing in right now. I mean, that's the difference. That's everybody says, well, what's different about recruiting now? June's the new January. The difference is when it was the old January, and you got to the end of the month, you had 3 days and everything was done. Now you get to the end of June and it's still 5 months before anybody signs, and
Well,
all kinds of things can happen out there still. The pressure's different in terms of
yeah,
kids making
I will say
decisions.
this: very few kids decommit anymore. So once you get them in July and August,
You feel pretty good,
you feel really good about it. Now,
but
here's the
still,
thing: other
hey,
people got
from
to
now
remember
to
too.
July 27th is a long time.
Here's the thing that people got to remember too. Like when kids go on official visits, and I don't mean just to Tennessee, I mean anywhere. Like they do physicals, they have to interact with others, and so all of a sudden you have an incident, or a kid medicals poorly or whatever, and that changes how a school looks at a kid. So like again, like different factors weigh kind of how these recruitments go. Like a school can be all in on a player, and then he gets on his official visit and is trying to fight somebody. And none of that stuff's happened, so don't make a mistake. But I'm saying like it's happened around the country at different places
Mhm.
at different times in life. So like things happen because you can be all in on a kid, and everybody goes, "Well, what happened? I mean, we wanted that guy, and all of a sudden we don't want him anymore."
Yeah.
Because things happen to change things,
Well,
and they happen now even more with NIL and what kids
mhm.
ask for in NIL, and it's not just as simple as money. They're wanting this and that, again, because kids shoot their shot, and I'm never going to blame a kid. You ask, and listen, I've got on a lot of high end golf courses because I asked.
That's
I
right.
asked the question. Sometimes I've been told no. Sometimes I've been told yes, but I asked, and that kid should ask. Go for it. Doesn't hurt.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens with some of those things and the variables that creep up here in the coming days and months as this class gets assembled, and the decision month that is July comes to fruition here in another week or so.